Good morning. Today we are going to talk about digitization in procurement, one of the big megatrends. But before we do that, let's kick it off with the intro.
Are you looking to up your negotiation and procurement skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to Procurement Zen with your host, Phil Kowalski.
All right, good morning. So, I think everybody who is at least a few weeks in procurement has for sure heard something about digitization, how to be more agile. And we also covered that in yesterday's episode where we talked about what the COVID crisis, has done with our perception within an enterprise. And one of those cornerstones or one of those pillars was actually digitization and analytics. So let's have a look at how digitization can work, what my experience is with it. And from what I see, basically, there are two models in place. There is the top-down model, we want to be more digital, said the CPO. Or bottom-up, I need to get rid of all that boring and mundane stuff to focus more on negotiations, says the buyer. So neither of these approaches, from my point of view, really do work alone, right? Neither bottom-up nor top-down. Instead, and I think that's the magic to it, instead they work together. What does that mean? Top down says we want to become more digital, and we, as leaders, allow our people in our procurement organization to play around with digital tools. And I think really the verb play is crucial here because that's actually what it is. We're talking about failures. We're talking about not having a guarantee that every approach will work out. We're talking about learning. I think that's quite important. Also, top down says we trust that our people don't misuse that freedom to play around, right? So we trust our people. Trust is an immensely important topic in especially in digitization, because as I said just a few seconds before, it comes with failure, and allowing failure is also a question of trust from my point of view. Also, management or top down says we think that our procurement people, have already ideas that they could leverage using digital tools. So it's not, let's say, from the outside in. Someone else comes and says, you have to do X, Y, Z, a consultant or anything like that, but rather saying, guys, here is a toolbox of digital tools. Use them to solve your most burning topics, to get more insights, whatever it is. And maybe one of the last statements that I want to hear in this two-tiered approach basically is that we, from top-down management, grant them the time to come up with ideas. And we acknowledge that this time is not used for, let's say, classical procurement work. So it's not used for reporting. It's not used to execute a negotiation. It's exactly what we said initially. It's this playing field where people play around, are allowed to fail. So that is the top-down approach. What about bottom-up? Bottom-up says, well, help me to automate and robotize maybe my daily mundane tasks, so I can focus more on the things that I like. I can share my very own experience with digitization and quote unquote robotics, because I was introduced into such a digitization program a few years ago, handed a tool, did a very short, like 2 hours hackathon to get an introduction into the tool, and then was allowed to play it around. What was the result? That was quite impressive, I have to say, because instead of doing like to 4 hours doing the monthly report, which I found mundane, which I found boring because it was repetitive copy and paste work, I reduced that time down to 10 minutes a month. 4 hours to 10 minutes. And I think that's quite interesting to see. And along the way, I learned the tool. So that was really something that sparked my passion for what else is possible. I now have every month a few hours more to focus on negotiations, to focus on supplier research and all these kind of things. And my experience is that's also how it usually works. It's not that all of a sudden one full-time employee is no longer needed or something like that. So it's not like a man year of time savings. It rather is, how can you say that? It rather is small steps while learning the tools, but they sum up like always. So let's focus on what else bottom up says as well. So bottom up also can say prediction is a big topic. So I want to have a gut feeling to be prepared how markets evolve. You cannot predict anything. If you could do that, maybe you would be a highly asked for consultant. But in general, I think it is possible to make predictions, to get insights, to have overview about markets and see some indicators. That's how they develop. This could also be bottom up, could also be supplier research, but on a big scale. For example, think LinkedIn. Yes, you can spend a whole day reviewing the counterparts of your on the negotiation table on LinkedIn, but you could also do this automated and get, let's say, a weekly report with the most important people and see what they post on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and all this kind of stuff. All this automated. So this is where we really get additional value, because the machine can do these repetitive tasks more easily, provide us as the experts with the information, so we then can evaluate. Prediction, automation, robotics, from my point of view, never means we blindly accept the outcome. No, we still evaluate it. But the machine helps us to quickly do these kind of things in a big scale, so to say. And as I said before, one other example, of course, this could be automated reporting that frees up time maybe to leave the office a little bit earlier. Yes, that's okay, dear management. And also maybe to prepare more for negotiations, to do just another project, to free up time. So, and one last thing that I have just recently discovered that I also like as a scope is digitization in procurement could be also low-code or no-code app that, for example, fosters early involvement, because that's at least my feeling. Sending around the policy 15 pages and say, read it, that's the procurement policy, you have to follow it, that just doesn't cut it anymore. Okay, so maybe one example for this approach, which does not come from the procurement world, is the famous Google 20% project. So Google actually made an approach to allow their employees to use 20% of their paid time they work for Google for personal interest, believing that this will be to the benefit of the company, that a widened focus might spark new ideas and innovations. And although this example is very famous, that approach, because it comes from shiny Google, is not new, basically. 3M basically did the very same thing with a 15% approach in 1948, because they had the famous mantra, innovate or die. And I think that's really how it works. In general, this idea here stays true. From top down, have management approve free time and let the procurement people from bottom up, the experts, use easy to use tools to come up with new solutions. So we will cover this approach also to digitization much more in future episodes. So if you're interested in that, you also may want to have a look on our YouTube channel if you're listening here to the podcast, because we have some videos regarding the tools I initially mentioned. It's called NIME. We have some tutorial videos there on our YouTube channel. And NIME is the tools that is one of the tools that I have used with great success to digitize a lot of my procurement work. So we will follow up on this one. So that basically concludes today's episode of the Procurement Zen experience. As always, please subscribe if you're looking to video, and you can find this episode also on our podcast and on our webpage at www.procurementzen.com/034. That's procurementzen.com/034 for episode 34. So, until tomorrow, and always happy negotiations.